Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. God bless you. A healthy life and a long living life with health and safety.
Amen, and same to you. So we're gonna do basically talk about the year in review and what you've been doing recently. So you said you attended.
Yeah, this morning around 12 o'clock, I think it's called Envision.
Mhm.
It's something that has to do with cybersecurity and also when you do the tracking when it comes to COVID-19.
Right.
It's a training program that HUD basically has, and a gentleman that ran for mayor, Jimmy Whitehead, is basically spearheading it. That's part of what he's been talking about for a while, for the last few years. And it was, I believe, there was a large grant to help fund it from HUD, which is something that we don't have too much of here.
Right.
I mean, it's still our money from taxpayers. Federal money is our money, So, but sometimes you get involved in local politics a lot, and we don't take advantage, and we just think of the state and county. But there's federal monies because we pay federal taxes. We should be taking advantage of that as well.
So you were part of this meeting because you are.
Well, because of what I do, it's about accountability. I mean, if you say it's going to do something, and you're doing it, I'm going to be there to see that it's done for the benefit of our people being hired and having getting the experience, but they can go anywhere in the world with cybersecurity. I've known
Right.
people that makes 80 to $90,000 a year out of Washington and other places that just came home from jail because they got the training and certification of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, a lot of people don't know exactly what it means, but in the short run of it, it has to do with hacking and different things like that. A lot of banks and a lot of businesses get hacked. I mean,
Right.
who's going to go into the security part of it? Cyber means basically got to do with computers.
Right.
So
Internet.
security, right? So
Yeah.
so that IT perspective of it, being trained to know what to detect, crime with it and security of it is very important, and that's something that's not going to go away no time soon.
Right. So you've been working on that, finding out how it benefits Atlantic City residents, even South Jersey residents.
Absolutely, and just like everything else, I mean, we government has to be accountable, be held accountable. It has to be we have to have access to it, and that needs to be transparent. But we don't get too much of that at all, especially since COVID-19.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. The hospital situation, I'm really concerned about that with the pediatric ward.
But we should be because we're talking about a genocide that's happening right there in front of our faces, our generation, and the people that understand and know about it. When it was taken away years ago, it should have been an outcry. I mean, how can you even take away the where people can be born at, birthright and maternity ward out of Atlantic City when we had one. It used to be a saying, people used to say, I was born and raised in Atlantic City. Well, for the last like 10 to 15 years, you couldn't say that because we don't have no maternity ward. How could you let somebody take away your birth, you being born here? And it increased the infant mortality rate, especially among Black women,
So
being born.
let me get this clear. If a person goes into labor, will they deliver it over here in Atlantic City, or they?
Absolutely not. In Atlantic City, we had a maternity ward in Atlantic City, which was almost 5 minutes away from anywhere. Uh, Now you got to go 15 to 20 minutes off. So you have to go to even the closest one is Summers Point, which there has a maternity ward, as well as the Atlantic City mainland, in Alloway and Galloway.
So I want to make sure everybody understands the situation here. If a person goes into labor, they can either call an ambulance, call a friend, or get on the bus.
Let me use this example. And this is an example that I actually use with the Tammy Murphy, who's the governor's wife, first lady of New Jersey. But she was here during a health fair at Pennsylvania Avenue School in the summertime. And that's a year ago. I confronted her and said, look, we don't have a maternity ward here. And we as I'm part of the Black Men United Coalition that has a Black agenda. And basically this agenda was asking for a maternity ward. And I said to her, an example is if a woman is pregnant and she has labor pains, and she calls the ambulance. The ambulance will come, and you can't go to Atlantic City because you don't have maternity ward here. You've traveled 15, 20 minutes away in the ambulance, right? So you get in the ambulance, you get checked in the hospital and everything, and then you find out it's a false labor, lost false pains. So now you got to get back home. How you gonna get home? You got there in the ambulance. So the stress alone of knowing that you came all this far and you're carrying a baby, that's what brings about the infant mortality rate, because it takes away, and people have miscarriage from all that stress and pressure that have to get back home. And if you have to catch an Uber, there's money coming from our community. And if you have to have catch a cab, there's money coming from our community, and so forth. So it's not like it's a shuttle there waiting for you to bring you home.
Which means also they have an $800 uh, ambulance bill.
That starts at 1,000. You call the
Okay,
ambulance.
okay.
You call the ambulance. It's an extra fee for them to come get you.
Which means
And then
more
it's
stress.
Absolutely. And then you're talking about how the bill's going to be paid. If you don't have no type of Medicaid or Medicare or some type of health care that you can afford, then that brings about more stress.
That's genocide.
Absolutely.
And see, people don't like to use that term, but if you break down the numbers, that's why I say that the Republican Party is the Republican Party of death, because their policies and their agenda in the long run kills people.
Well, I go even further than that. I go all the way to the Constitution. This Constitution in the United States have amendments for a reason. They had amendments because it wasn't a good document. That wasn't the end of the document. It's a working document, but we wasn't included with that.
Right.
So if you still have the same Senate and the same Congress that actually have going by the same laws, it don't matter who's president. It don't matter who's on the Senate. Right. It don't matter who. So we can't get happy over controlling the Senate or the Congress when the Constitution is still there against us as Black folks.
Well, people don't realize that. I will even go a little bit, bring it forward a little bit. Lyndon Johnson in the 1968 Civil Rights Bill and the voting bill, and he also instituted Social Security, but he had a clause in there that domestics cannot get Social Security, meaning this: the only domestics at that time were Black people. So it was aimed directly at Black people. Say, well, you can't get it. Basically, is what he was saying, and that's why I say that the Democratic Party hands are not always clean, but at least we can work with these guys. But going back to the Constitution was, as you said, we weren't included in that. It was wealthy, capitalist landowners, which were slavers.
And now their children's children, and they left a legacy of slavery. And that's why, and they embedded legacies of slavery into the chains on our minds. And you wonder why some people don't stand up and don't see no racism that's Black and going through it just like us, because the chains on their brain has been brainwashed to say, look, it don't exist, or it's not just happening to you. But the numbers don't lie, because the disparity of Blacks, especially mostly Black people, that's been in jail and being killed by mostly white police officers throughout this country is enormous. You can't say ethnic group is going through what we went through. That's why we say Black Lives Matter, because no one is going through what the Black man in America has been through. No one, not even no one on this earth, knows the feeling of what we went through. Well, hangings, the lynching, we're still on our brains, on the chains on our mind. It's going to continue to go from generation to generation unless we wake up. One thing that COVID-19 had done, as well as what happened to George Floyd, is waking the people up, because you couldn't go nowhere. You had to stay in that house and out of that school system where you had to learn about yourself now. When you start seeing black people marching, talking about their rights with
You
housing,
beginning to see what's going on.
exactly, it was a
Yeah.
wake-up call to take the chains off the brain.
Yeah. Now, see, here's the other thing about it. Most people, black folks, don't understand that recently the American Medical Association has said that racism is a public threat, meaning that they recognize that racism hurts the community. Now, this is the American Medical Association that most people don't realize. That's it. They said that prejudice, racism, the treatment of young black men by police, and the things that they do to us, it is a health crisis that affects the community.
And I even go further than that. The United Nations.
I was getting ready to go there. I was just getting ready to go there.
They actually said what racism has done to human beings alone, us as a human being. It's a human rights violation right now of what has happened to the black man and woman here in America.
They condemned America for it.
Absolutely.
And Pompeo got up and said that, nah, we don't have that problem in America. Right. So they asked for document. Matter of fact, the lady we just did, Eric Gardner's mother.
Yes.
She presented that.
Yes.
She went there and presented and said that the murder of black men in America is a human rights violation. And even Malcolm X at one point went to them to get them to do that. And the reason why America has never become a part of the UN is because of that reason right there.
Well, Malcolm X was dead on point.
Yeah.
Because everyone must listen to the speech that he made to the United Nations and to the World Court to talk about the human rights violation that was done to us as black people.
Yes.
And we can still carry on that fight today. If I were to get in front of the United Nations right now and say the human rights violation that has been done to black folks, and America needs to do reparations to black people, and I'll say, well, let's take a vote. We have more black countries that know the feeling of what we went through, such as apartheid in South Africa and everything else, and what they have seen through George Floyd. They will take a vote. So whatever the white countries, they're not the majority. So the majority of the black countries will vote yes. It's a human rights violation, and you must compensate them just like you did the Jewish community, just like you did the Japanese community. Now here it is, the black man and the woman in America that has suffered from the genocide that you're doing and have done, then there needs to be reparations for.
Let me hit you to another word that I don't exactly use, genocide, because it's all over the map. They don't vote this way because it's not enough. But what the new term that people are coming aware with called domicide. And domicide is the direct killing of black people by the government. It doesn't mean that, so just keep that in mind. Right. So
when I use genocide, it's because the word genocide comes from the word genes.
Right.
So mostly of our genes, the people that have genes like us, black people, it's a genocide towards making sure that we are not even on this planet Earth. Okay. Because we got to realize what's happening all over the world is that we over 6 billion people. We have an increase we never had before. And the reason being, it's going to be up to 10 billion people in the world soon. Now, it's usually a war that happens to eliminate the people.
Yeah.
We haven't had a war. It's like a Cold War. And when you have the Cold War, then you have what you call those genocide. They put guns in your community. They put drugs in your community.
Well, that is actual war.
Exactly.
One-sided though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They call it gang war. They call it drug war. That's a war against black folks.
Yeah.
That's all it's been. Because we were multiplying. and we continue to multiply. One thing about what happened with George Floyd, what happened with COVID-19, there's going to be more babies, black babies, in our communities being born than anywhere else. You know why? We had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So when you had nowhere to go and you
What
had
you
to
gonna
stay
do?
in that house
What you
for
gonna
30
do?
days or 60 days.
You're gonna do the nature
Hey,
thing,
listen,
right? You're gonna
that
do
goes
the
from the
nature
young
thing,
as well
yeah.
as the old.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a multiplying of a generation of people. They're going to say, wow, where are these people going and being pregnant? So what would you do if you don't want to see the black community expand to more black people? You take away their maternity ward. So the infant mortality rate before they're even born, you're making sure that they don't be increased. And that's a genocide.
It is.
Around our genes.
It is.
And the makeup of our body.
And see, people don't look at it that way. They would say, how can people be that heartless? Well, they are that heartless, but they disguise it in different things. They said law and order. And that's what the Republicans always use. We are for law and order. Well, that's just a dog whistle for we coming after black people. But people don't understand that. People like Candace Owens, which is, But let me say this before I forget my thought.
Sure.
The United Nations has condemned America for racist behavior. The American Medical Association has condemned America because of racism and hatred and the killing of black people. So for somebody, even black, to sit up and say, well, you just lazy, you don't want to do anything, all you want to do is do drugs and do all of this. These are government bodies that recognize now that the treatment of black people in this country is a problem for this country, and it gets worse.
For the people at the grassroots level that's on the street, we've been saying that for years. We've been saying this for years.
I got that in my book.
You know what I mean?
This ain't nothing new to us.
If they were out there on the front line, they would know.
They would know.
That's
right.
why the people on the front line need to be at the decision making of talking about the solutions, because we experienced it. So we know what the problems are. If you haven't experienced, you're in the comfort zone and don't really know.
Because America gives you, we are the richest country on earth. So the poorest of us is living better than those that are in other countries that are far worse than what we have it. So we get lulled into a little stupor and says, well, things can't be that bad. Well, yeah, actually they are that bad if you were paying attention. So I wrote a Facebook post and I said in there, and I repeated the statistics that I just said, and I says, this is not new to us.
No.
People, news flash, really?
Right.
They had a conference to announce this. It ain't new.
But what you're doing is key, because we don't control the media.
Right.
There's nowhere we can go to bring about our news on the front line of what's been going on. That's why we have demonstrations, to expose the hypocrisy and the news, what's going on in our communities.
Right.
That's why we can't stop marching, because that's the only media outlet we have to actually expose what's going on in this country and throughout this world and what's happening to us.
Yeah, and you got the conscious folks, the black consciousness folks that says marching is a waste of time. No, it isn't. It's a part of a larger organization. You got to have the marching, you got to have the legislation, you have to have the grassroots, you have to have all of these things. You can't discount it because you don't like it. Well, marching does nothing. Well, yes, it does.
Let me tell you, everyone knows, they say voting don't matter.
Right.
But they found out that it does.
And that's why
especially
they
the black
out.
vote
Yeah.
too. Now you realizing that the black vote, it counts.
It means something.
And now we got to hold people accountable and saying, that's our vote that got you in office. Now we got to hold them accountable. We can't just vote no more and just leave people there. We got to be knocking on that door, that politician or that elected official, and saying, listen, it's about this agenda in the street. It's not about you at your comfort zone, at your table. It's about the grassroots. Grassroots means it's coming from the foundation of the earth. That's where everything begins.
Which means you go to your city council meetings.
That's correct.
If you can. If you can get there, you get there. You go to your school board meetings.
Correct.
If you can get there. You write letters, and everybody can write
That's
letters.
right.
You make phone calls. This
That's
is
right.
all part of the grassroots that we need to do to take back our community for our people.
And that's how you hold them accountable. Those things, writing letters, on the phone, going to those meetings, even if it's Zoom meetings, find out, go to their website, find out when they having their public meetings. I just went to the school board meeting, and that was very interesting on Tuesday, and what happened last week. So basically, I had to bring up an issue where they actually cut me off a Zoom meeting.
Get out.
From talking about issues that's dealing with the mayor and the principal of the school. When they're alleged that their cousin, Mr. Frazier, abused our children sexually, and it wasn't reported the right way.
Now, I don't want you to, hold on. I don't want you to get in trouble for saying that.
No, I said alleged.
It's a fact.
I'm going by
the paper,
the
right?
FBI report that states
Okay.
this guy Frazier,
You read that.
They had an address of where the mayor of Atlantic City lived in, and he was working under the direction of a principal of a school, which is his cousin, Ms. Smalls. And at that time, the FBI report stated there were several children sexually abused by touching genitals, by exposing their bodies. There's videos of children in this city that went all over the world, even with Japan. The FBI investigated this. I'm talking about their report.
You read this
So
in the paper?
I have the report, the federal report from the FBI.
All right.
And that is
okay.
not
That
something we're
covers
making
you.
up.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That covers
And that's
you.
why I
Okay.
always say alleged.
Yeah.
But it's so deep that these things were just found out almost a year after this arrest. So now we're holding accountable the school board, because different policies in the school board that says about a person getting hired, about nepotism, different things like
They
that.
had the same thing in Pleasantville.
Right.
Yeah.
But these policies are important because these policies is what the board has to go through, and go through. So they hired a private someone to investigate it, an attorney to investigate it, other than the regular board attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Which is for the first time, I'm telling you that after the last meeting, they didn't think I was going to bring it up at the last meeting in December, because what happened, October, I went to the meeting, and the school board meeting, and I went down about the policy and how we want to make sure these children are getting help, and how was these families notified.
Right.
These was the major questions.
But nobody was talking about none of that.
Right. So after that, right, they said, well, they're going to look into. They took a vote for to get an attorney to look into it, rather than using the city attorney, the attorney that they have for the board. Well, guess what? Some of the board members voted against it. Now, why would you vote against transparency of some of the parents being notified about their children being abused, according to the FBI report? So after that October meeting, they had a November meeting. So now we're waiting to go back to that meeting. I get online, because they said we're going to be in person. Went online, right? Had to give my name, address, everything. So now during the Zoom public meeting, I'm watching the meeting. Next thing I know, 2 minutes until the meeting started, I'm cut off. I tried to cut back on. It says only 300 people is allowed to come on. So they cut me off and try to justify it. Yeah. So Tuesday, when I got back on the meeting, I said that was very disrespectful. Me as a taxpayer and a resident, that you're not transparent.
And an activist.
And an activist, not transparent enough. And I appreciate that never happens again. Because one thing about me, and some people that are with me, we're going to be consistent, especially when it comes to our children. So basically, I told the board that, and I went down the questions again. They wanted me to email it to them, email it to the secretary, board secretary. I said, no problem, but you can listen to the tape in October, and you got the same questions.
So,
But they do have, and this is what I said for the first time, they do have someone investigating, and they're going to open up a hotline for all those children and those parents that was afraid of being retaliated against, of maybe you losing your job because you're talking about,
or even your child,
or your child. You know what I mean? So and for it to be confidential, they're gonna have a hotline, and I think that's a great step towards seeing some transparency while they're doing the investigation, and so those children can get some help. Because that child that was abused by an adult like that can grow up to be the rapist. You don't know what he'll end up being, all because he wasn't heard or nobody listened to the cry and spoke up.
So let me ask you a question. They fired him after they found out this stuff, right?
Let me tell you what happened. After they fired him, after they found out about it, now usually it's a mandate. If you know a child is being abused by an adult, teachers, doctors, lawyers, it's mandatory that you report it to law enforcement and to division DCP&P.
Actually, it's law.
Yeah, right, mandatory law.
Yeah.
Now, from our understanding of what we know so far, it's alleged that wasn't done. So now, by that not being done, he wasn't flagged. So he was able to go and work for DCP&P. You hear me? After he did that, so it's a question of what did they follow his record of working in the school system and the documentation of what happened, and then you're going to put him in another position dealing with our children of working for the state for DCP&P, which is called DIFAS.
Is he still in that position?
No, this is when it happened. After he abused the children, right? Sexually abused them, all that. So it wasn't a red flag at that time. When it was reported to the school, right? They basically fired him. So how did he get a job working for DCP&P after you get fired and terminated for hurting children? How? So the state is responsible too. How many children was hurt under the watch and of the hiring practices? Because I know people with bachelors and degrees in psychology and everything else want a job working, but can't get in. Yeah. Was it by who he knew?
Of course.
See, these are the things that need to be checked out. And the main thing, and I told them on Tuesday, that how many children and how was the families notified? And if not, they need to be notified and they need to seek some help. Even the people, especially the people that's involved with this, if you knew about it, you need some help and need to be in jail.
You know the reason why those board members voted against him? Because they felt that the parents would sue the state. So what?
That's not their money. Now, most of them did because, let's face it, most of them have conflicts of their family member working for the school district.
That's the other reason, yeah.
So if I'm getting retaliated against about a non-paid position and a volunteer position, they say, well, they know they would lose their job. Why are they making money? So these type of things is very serious. This was going on in Atlantic City, this dictatorship with people that look like us.
Yeah.
And that's why the white man sit back and said, listen, they enslaved and we're going to use their own against them.
So, and I don't
Willie Lynch.
I don't want to be mean about this, but I'm going to have to preface my words properly. So Atlantic City's government, those that are black, would be considered a marionette. Marionette is a puppet that has strings that you see the puppets with the strings on them. That's called a marionette. So when you say that a person is a marionette, that means somebody other than themselves are controlling them and pulling their strings.
And the terminology we use is basically the same. It's the puppeteer and it's the
Yeah.
puppet.
Right.
So we have some people on council and some and the mayor that's puppets for the state. That means the state is telling them where to go, when to walk, and you can prove this. You can get a $39,000 a year raise because you're my puppet. I'm going to endorse you. You're my puppet. This is actual facts. The governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, endorsed Marty Small for mayor. Why? Because he's going to do his bidding for him, so you won't look at the governor. The Atlantic City is under what you call the Municipal Stabilization Recovery Act. That means while the mayor, Smalls, when he was council person, the spending of money wasn't spent right, so they had to ask money from the state. The state said, okay, we're going to give you this money, it's called transitional aid, but you got to sign an MOU that the state would hire, fire, and be in control, and you got to get permission, and we can veto anything you do. So that means they the puppeteers. So they're controlling what's going on here, and we must need to get that word out.
Okay.
The truth of what's going on.
So that's a year in review.
So look, let me finish though. So now, a few months later, he gets in office, Mayor Smalls, right? Got to run again in June for a primary, and got to run again in November for another general election. So really, if he may be out in November again. Right. So the thing of it is, you're going to reward him with a $39,000 a year raise. So they put on the agenda, and they say it's council's fault because council voted for it, but you didn't have to approve it. You could have vetoed it at the state. Why give him a $39,000 a year during an epidemic? We going to COVID-19, people not going to work, people not eating, and why you as a mayor, you say you're a public servant, why you accept it? So let's deal with the solution. Give it back.
Fat chance.
Or council, go rescind it. Rescind, and everything can be amended and rescinded in politics. That means you changing the law to take the money back. Right. Because no way you have people that've been in public works working 25 and 20 years, and they making less than $25,000 a year, and you making $117,000 as a mayor when you come in, and then you want another $39,000 raise, $39,000, which is a whole salary for some of these people. What about children in the summertime? They didn't have no summer jobs.
That's a
yearly salary for an average person.
Yeah.
So it's about yourself, or is it about the people? If you're a public servant, you're not there for the money.
So
it speaks for itself.
It speaks for itself. So this guy that's going to be making $200,000, basically, has said nothing about not having a paternity ward in Atlantic City. I'm sorry, I gotta. He said nothing about it.
Let me tell you, part of the reason why I got locked up in July is because we gave him a black agenda and he didn't have one.
Right.
The black agenda included solutions for the black community and Atlantic City, period. So we could stabilize ourselves. We gave that same agenda to Phil Murphy when he first got in office, and to the Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, stating that we don't have to depend on you to do everything. We can do some things for ourselves, but this is the path to working together with a black agenda, dealing with business, dealing with youth, dealing with education, dealing with housing, dealing with the poverty. And you know what they did? First, the state took our agenda. It was at the convention center, at the convention hall on the boardwalk. They told everybody to spread out in that room at that time and come up with your ideas. We had a handwritten document with our agenda said, here, this is ours. Nobody else in that room had it. Next thing we know, 6 months later, they come out talking about there's a Johnson report. Know what's in the Johnson report? Everything we said. Everything we said. So then they established.
Which ain't not necessarily a
As long as
bad
it get
thing.
done, we don't, but done the right way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then they went a little further. They created what you call executive committee through that plan that Johnson report. So that included all the colleges here, Atlantic Cape Community College, Stockton College, Atlantic City Housing Authority, Police Department. You had the casino executives. You had council people, mayor. Now you got all these people at the table. They leave town every day, right? And there's private meetings without us being able to attend. But you're talking about our survival and us, about agenda that we gave you that they can't implement. So what happened, what got them mad, we said we was gonna close down Atlantic City on July the 1st. Okay. So he said, the mayor did, Steve, well, what can we do so we don't have this? I said, look, it ain't about not having. We need to let everybody know that Black Lives Matter, and here's a Black agenda that we want to implement. And because of COVID-19, we don't want to see this city open on July the 4th so everybody can come in and kill us more, because we're the majority of Black folks being killed. So why are you going to open up a city? So we said, no, we're going to be there to shut it down. We said also, because of systemic racism of what happened to George Floyd, and us not being, there's no fair equity in economics in this town, and all the money go out and not coming in, and we had the solutions to it. We need to sit down with the hospital to talk about opening up a maternity ward and a pediatric ward again. We want to talk to Tangler outlets, so we can talk about why you got 150 stores in Atlantic City, majority are white, and nobody Black even have one here. We need to talk about the casino executives that's not Black that work in these casinos. We need to talk about contracts in the casinos. We need to talk about the school system when they talk about the education and the Black curriculum. All these things are legit. So we gave it to the mayor.
Yeah, I remember.
So now, and this is what he did. He said, well, we're not having it, and we're gonna see that you get locked up. You know, all this type of threatening.
But you know the thing that got me upset the most was that he didn't even read it, because he said that we're not implementing any of this.
At the same time, he was taking and trying to implement it himself, because he was running for mayor, and he used his van and his authority as a mayor and a candidate for office to expose the corruption that he was doing. In other words, we have freedom of speech and freedom of assemblage, and he's coming out there with his van talking about vote for Marty Small.
Yeah, I remember. But you don't listen. We go on for days.
But that's what happened at the end of the year. We just went to court.
Yeah.
And when we went to court, and we went on August the 24th. It's been transferred to Atlantic City. 7 of us, we call it Expressway 7. We got locked up in Atlantic City. When we went to the court on the 24th, it was like arraignment, August the 24th. Then we went back on the 17th of December last week. And basically, we went before the judge, and we asked for a speedy trial, and we asked him for, discovery, so forth. Then we asked for a date, a trial date, because we have a list of people that we subpoenaed, from the Department of Justice in Washington all the way to the person that was filming what was going on. So the judge, to make a long story short, the judge basically was saying, well, I can't give you no date. So I said that means is the Constitution suspended because of us? Because right now you're doing trial and making pleas with people going to court every day. So we're not going to get our due process. So he basically said, I can't do no trial. I don't know when the state going to open it up. So basically we said, well, who's from the state gives authority to open it up? He said, well, the state does. He thought I was being funny, but I'm trying to get a direction. So what happened was, when I asked the question again, I said, well, so I can get in touch with the state, and the state will open up the courts and whatnot. He said, no, the Supreme Court. I said, okay. Okay. Now, I believe that was the correct word to use, the court.
Right.
Because we got 3 branches of government: the executive branch, judicial branch, and judicial and legislative. So by having, it's supposed to be checks and balances. One not supposed to interfere with the other. But you tell me, didn't the governor shut down the court when he said everything was closed?
Yeah. Yeah.
So isn't that part, and this is happening all over the country. So now we don't have that balance of power anymore, do we? So those are the things being challenged all the way to there, just because you locked us up. The Constitution is going to be challenged. And it's going to be challenged because you locked up 7 Black people when you couldn't stand up for yourself. And they stood up for you and put their life on the front line. But you want to be at the front table as a mayor to get the crumbs. When we was saying set the table the way towards our agenda, you want to get the crumbs and be the puppeteer for them to keep us frightened or fearing us through being incarcerated or paying a fine. I mean, really? So those are things that I wanted to bring up. And finally, on Monday, I went to the court, to the Senate in Trenton.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having the legislation on the marijuana bill. And it was interesting because I testified and I talked about how Atlantic City, when it comes to gambling, you took all the money, you said it's going to help the social ills and housing and different things in economics in Atlantic City, didn't help. Atlantic City is practically bankrupt.
Yeah.
Then you did it with the lottery. You said lottery is going to save us. We had numbers games. We was running number games. We were doing fine. We were bootlegging with liquor as Black people. We were doing fine. You put a seal on it and said it's illegal to sell. They did the same thing with gambling. They did the same thing with everything. Now here it is, marijuana. Now in that statute that it's called S21 and A21. It's from the Senate Bill 21 and Assembly Bill 21 in the State House. And I said to them, what guarantees we have that those funding is not going to get back to the people that was hurt the most, those brothers being incarcerated, those mothers, because their fathers and the mothers were incarcerated for one joint of marijuana, but yet you making it legal now. And we need social ills and things in our community to be done, jobs and everything else. And you're going to spend it towards offsetting your taxes that you increased because you was in charge.
Right.
But yet we're gonna suffer because of it. And you're gonna make people out of millionaires that don't look like us coming in our community. An example of it is the medical marijuana. We got a dispensary right there on that boardwalk. You tell me how much money they're sending out. They've been there for almost 3 years. What money have they got circulating in our community? That you know? So what makes us think that recreation marijuana gonna do the same? Matter of fact, you're going to increase brothers getting locked up now.
Yeah.
Because now, if you're not buying it from one of them, then it's illegal. You're going to get locked up.
Right. Well, Steve.
So, thank you. I really appreciate it. I love coming here with you because you ask those questions that make sense. And a lot of people don't.
Well, here's one thing I want to say. Mm-hmm. If you like this video, make sure you save it because I'm not sure how long Facebook will keep it up. Because they flagged one of mine that I did during the mayor's race. So I won't do that anymore. But, people, you send it to them, tell them to make sure they save it because we don't know how long it's going to be up on YouTube.
Well, if you can send it, you can put it on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna put it on YouTube.
Exactly.
And on my Facebook pages. So this has been a year in review. We have to do this again because it was entirely too short.
Yes. Yes, it is.
After the first of the year, we'll come back and we'll do it again. But this has been a year in review with my friend and activist, Steve Young. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll say to everyone, God bless, salam, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you.